And this month, my good friend Zach Pincince is with us. Zachary, how are you?
I am muted. That's how I am.
You're
But I'm
muted.
good.
That's
I'm no
how
longer
you are.
muted anymore.
Unmute
Yeah.
yourself. You're going to get interviewed.
I was about to speak and I realized I could not. But I am doing well. This year sure is flying by, huh?
Zach,
We're already in July. It's crazy.
we're already in July. And for those of you who are maybe have not heard of Zach or who have only heard of him a little, the reason I really wanted to talk to him this month is Zach really represents a new generation of stage hypnotist, and whether he wants to or not, he does. So we'll talk about whether he wants to or not. But just the math of it, right? Like he is literally age-wise representing a new generation of hypnotists, and what that means for the profession is debatable. And I that's what I want to hear about. I want to hear about his thoughts about that. And I also want to hear about something that he's done well. And I don't know. And again, this is what I'll get into asking him is I don't know if he's done it purposefully or he stumbled into it, but there's something to learn either way. Zach's done a good job of cultivating some opportunities to work for some really big names. And I think that's one thing that we all would like to do at some point. And so we're going to talk about that. And we're just going to have fun. Zach's always easy to talk to. Zachary, let's start with that first aspect of when you got into hypnotism. And I know because I trained you, I know the answer to the beginning of this. You just loved it and you wanted to do it. But one of the things I was so impressed with you about early on was that you were truly all in. And you really, your acceleration into the profession was truly like top 5%, because you were so like, this is all I'm doing right now in my life. You focused, and for those of you who don't know, Zach was literally in his senior year of college. He was going to college full time and he was finishing up his senior year, but he knew already, he had made a commitment to himself that when he was done, he was going to go down this path. And so we were working on that together and I was giving him stuff to do. And no matter what, I could have been like, so next what you need to do is go climb Everest to have a very important experiential, metaphorical experience. And he would have been like, okay, Paul. And he did everything I talked to him about doing to the best of his ability. It was awesome. So Zach, when you knew that and you knew you wanted to go really after this, and it was your central focus, did you have a vision for like what you wanted to achieve as a hypnotist or an artist? Or tell us about kind of like that, like where was your head at initially around that kind of stuff?
Man, I will say it's easy to be a great student when you have a great teacher. So we'll throw that out there before I say anything else. But yeah, when I started my senior year, I was in my senior year of high school. I almost didn't start training with Paul my last semester because I was like, I'm a senior in college. I'm an RA on campus. I was involved in like 6 different student organizations and classes. And I was like, maybe I should wait until after I get out of college. And Paul was like, no, do it now. That way you can jump into it when you graduate. I was like, all right, sure. Why not just add more to my plate? And it was great. But no, when I got started, like a lot of us had a background in magic a little bit, learned magic while I was in college for fun and just started getting into other types of performing, entertaining, did a little bit of stand-up, did a little bit of improv, and then thought, oh, why not learn hypnosis? That seems cool too, and started doing it for a couple months. And that was the one I gravitated much more than the other types of performance. And so when I was heading into my last semester as a communication major, I thought, you know what? Why not try to make this a career and see what I can do after I graduate? So initially, I didn't have any grand vision of, I want to be the most famous hypnotist in the world, or I want to have all of these followers on social media. I just wanted to do something cool as a job and not just have to graduate and sit at a desk or do a boring 9 to 5. I wanted to do something that was fun, that was enjoyable, that was more than just a job for the paycheck, but a job for the passion, if you will. And so for me, I was jumping into it just for the opportunity that it sounded like something fun to do and something cool. And working with Paul was really special because the first hypnosis show I ever saw was my freshman year of college, and Paul was the one who performed it. And if you were sitting next to me in that audience and were whispering in my ear, like, "Hey, you're gonna be doing this when you graduate," I would have thought, "What drugs are you on that you're telling me I'm gonna be doing this? I had never even seen this when I walked in the door." And so it was a really fun full circle moment. But no, initially there was never any grand vision for, oh, I'm gonna have all these TikTok followers and YouTube views and perform for Tony Robbins and Russell Brunson. It was just, hey, I'm just want to do something cool, and it escalated from there.
All right. So now I'm going to re-ask that question with you a slightly forward aspect is so
Oh, which
then
is a polite way of saying I didn't answer it.
no,
So
no, you
okay.
did answer it. And to me, there's a cool progression here. And that's what I'm really trying to draw attention
Yeah.
to is so like, so I get what you're saying is like, you just saw the potential to have a really cool, fun job and actually make a living doing something really cool and fun, which so many of us can relate to. But again, generationally, here's where you're a little different is you had a natural facility for social, right? Like we all use social, but you grew up with it. And so I think the way you thought of its use was a little
Well, yes,
different.
yes and no. I
No,
literally
tell
didn't
me
even
about
have an
that.
Instagram account until, I don't know if you remember this. I didn't have an Instagram, and you're like, Zach, you need to
That's right.
create
I
an
did.
Instagram. You are like going into entertaining, performing. You need to make one. I didn't even have a personal Instagram account. I started a YouTube channel. I like used Facebook to communicate with friends and family, and that was it. So I didn't really even have as much of an inclination as maybe
That's
the rest of my
interesting.
generation does. And I've
Yeah.
sort of built this over the past few years. But even still, like I don't tend to post a lot of personal stuff on social media because I just don't like using it personally. It's sort of a weird like, oh,
Yeah.
I got to use it because it helps my career and helps me grow in that way. But if it weren't for that, I don't know that I would really use it as much as
Yeah.
maybe other people do. So there's that sort of strange aspect to it as well.
Okay. So, I mean, the people who maybe don't know you personally, but know of who you are, it's probably because of your social presence, though. You would agree,
Yeah,
right?
that
And
definitely
so,
helps.
people who have found you, they've found you on TikTok or they've found you on YouTube, um, or maybe they found you on Instagram. But you're two biggies, right? You've got like what 4 million on TikTok
Yep.
and over 500,000 on YouTube, and so your ability to leverage that early in your career was fantastic. And so again, I get a sense like I remember you calling me. I remember you calling me and being like, "Hey, have you heard of TikTok?" And I was like, "No." And you were like, "I think I'm the first hypnotist on TikTok and it's pretty cool and you might want to do it." And I was like, "No." And now here we are. I'm still not on TikTok. I was briefly, and then I left, and you're on there with 4 million followers, which you've done a great job of pipelining a good portion of them over to your YouTube. So I can tell that you weren't like, I have a master plan, but you pay
I
attention.
wish I
So
could
no,
say that I did. Yes.
so so now years have gone by, you've been doing it and doing it well to the point that you qualify numbers wise for the title of influencer. How do you think of yourself in your head? Are you a hybrid, or are you a hypnotist who also happens to be an influencer, or an influencer who also happens to be a hypnotist? Like, tell us about that.
I think it's probably closer to the hypnotist who happens to be an influencer side of it. I don't really see I live in LA. I have a lot of friends who are influencers and they make videos full time. They do YouTube, they do TikTok, and like that's their main job is they're not also hypnotists, like they're mainly influencers. And I don't necessarily see myself as influencers in the same way because I'm not necessarily trying to create content, right? A lot of my influencer friends, they're like, all right, let's plan and come up with ideas. And I want to film this skit idea or film this viral idea or do this and this will make a fun video. I'm just kind of like I want to do my thing and I film it every time I do my thing and I have fun videos and I put them up on the internet. But there's very little editing, there's very little planning. It's just, oh, I do a show and I have someone, I literally put in my rider like I have a student volunteer or somebody film the show for me. And so I just give them my phone with a little tripod and they sit in the front and watch the show and just hold up my phone and film it. And afterwards, I have the whole show filmed. I can take this 30-second clip, this 60-second clip, this 5-minute clip to put on YouTube. And I can just take pieces of what I'm already doing live and put it on social media. But it's not a lot of heavy editing. It's not planning, oh, what content do I need to post today? Or how am I creating content? It's more just how can I repurpose the content I already have from what I'm doing live and the performing that I'm already doing and just be able to put it online. So I don't know that I really see myself as that much of an influencer. Like you said, I sort of have that title just based on the followers and the views at this point. But to me, it was never really about like, oh, always creating content, always planning content, always doing this. It was just, oh, I want to build up what I'm doing so that I can make hypnosis my full-time job and do this for a living. And I have. And now it's cool that I also sort of have this side pocket where if I never did another show today, I have a following that I could do something with if I wanted to become a full-time influencer instead. Like it's a nice fallback if need be. But yeah, definitely more hypnosis than
which makes it, I think, interesting, right? Because again, what so many people in our industry are trying to do is crack the code, right? And they're saying, how do I get to do a show for Tony Robbins? How do I get to do a show for Russell Brunson? And you're living proof that it's not necessarily having some sort of viral formula figured out. Tell everyone the story of how you got the show for Tony.
Yeah, I mean, that was a little bit of it was a little bit of luck. One of my best friends actually works for Tony, so I sort of had that connection where he was in a room and Tony was planning one of his platinum partner events, and they were thinking about doing some sort of entertainment, maybe like a comedian or something. And my friend just sort of brings up, oh, why not bring a hypnotist? Like my friend's a really great hypnotist, like he would do great. And they're like, oh, that's not a bad idea. We've never had a hypnotist at these events before. So they reached out. It was literally like 2 weeks before this event, so it was very, very last minute. But they were like, hey, do you want to come and do a show for this event? And I was like, heck yeah, I want to come do a show for this event. And it was a lot of fun. So,
and then Russell,
but it was a very, I wish I could say it was a like, oh, I was constantly reaching out and was networking and built all of this grand plan and it finally came to fruition. It was just,
but again, I think that's the point. I think it's a very easy point to gloss over, right? Is we all want to keep believing that if we've got the right ad share or ad spend, or that if we've got the right number of followers on some account, that we're going to just start cracking into opportunities. And what most consistently seems to show up is your opportunities are the result of the relationships that you cultivate. Yeah. Right. And you've been a good, I mean, because it's like, how did you connect with Russell?
So that was, again, not a totally like forefront relationship, but it was his kids are actually really big fans of my videos. Yeah. So what happened is I was doing a live stream on TikTok like early 2020, like a couple months before the pandemic. And on this live stream, I see this person comments like, oh, do you know Russell Brunson? And I was like, oh yeah, I know Russell. I've read his books. Like he's great. I think it was like right before Funnel Hacking Live. So I was like, oh, he's got an event coming up. Like great guy, like fan of his work. And later that night, Russell Brunson sends me a message on Instagram saying, hey, my kids were watching your live stream and just want to let you know they're big fans of your videos and content. And so we exchanged a few messages, and he invited me to Funnel Hacking, but I had some stuff going on that week. But then a month or two later, he reached out again and said, hey, I have this event coming up that I would love for you to perform at. It's where we have a lot of, their high paying clients bring a lot of their kids and teenagers and young adults to start learning about entrepreneurship and marketing. And they're like, every year we bring different performers, magicians, jugglers, comedians, but we thought it would be awesome to have you come perform, especially because my kids are such big fans. And that was supposed to happen in the summer of 2020. Obviously, it didn't end up happening because of the pandemic, but he ended up reaching out earlier this year and was like, hey, we're still doing that event just now 2 years later, and would still love for you to come and be a part of the event. And so again, it was more of a like, I was just sort of doing my thing, putting my videos out there, and you never know who will watch it. And I was like, oh, right. It's so cool that Russell's kids watch the videos and were fans. And that resulted in me performing at one of his events. Like who would have thought?
And it's easy to chalk that up to luck and just say it's luck, but it's not just luck. That's my point, right? Is it's how are you working an overall approach to create opportunities for yourself? And again, I think a lot of times it's about being aware of cultivating relationships. And I mean, again, talk about influencer. You were on Lewis Howe, like you weren't on his show, but you connected with Lewis Howe too, right? And that was just you trying to cultivate a positive relationship. And he ended up letting you do didn't he let you hypnotize him?
He did. Yeah. He had said he'd tried it before and it didn't work with other hypnotists. And we got it to work to an extent where it was at least further than other hypnotists had gotten, which was fun. So
yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. You know, there's the classic saying that the harder I work, the luckier I get, right? There's always that. So
Yeah. Yeah. So going forward from here, let's again, progression. Like, do you want to stay the hypnotist who also happens to be an influencer? Or do you think there's a point where it's worthwhile to purposely be like, I'm going to focus more and more on being an influencer? Or is there a whole other thing that you're like, now that I've done this, it positions me to allow a new opportunity for myself?
you know, I think the funny thing is I'm going to give an answer, and then I think in 3 to 5 years, what I'm actually doing will probably be completely different than what my answer is, because that's just the funny thing about life is it has a way of not going according to plan, and yet it still works out great because that's just the way life is. But I think right now I'm sort of at this fun crossroads where I'm still doing shows. I'm still enjoying doing shows, but especially doing the event I did for Russell last month. I got to do the show, but I also got to like speak the next day and actually do like a short keynote. And for me, like that was really special. And that was a really fun moment where, you know, to me, I was like, man, I want to start doing more of this. Like, and that was one of the reasons I even got into hypnosis, was because I appreciated the deeper psychological side beyond just the fun, pure entertainment. I appreciated how it did actually, you know, speak to just the power of belief and the way the mind works, and how that understanding that can just make our lives better when we incorporate that into just the way that we live. And so for me, I've always really loved just personal development and psychology, and really just exploring and diving deep into just the philosophy of belief and what it means to live well. And so being able to speak at the event last month, and then just having such great feedback from all of these attendees telling me of how great it was and how much they took away from it and these different things that resonated with them, to me, I'm kind of like, man, I want to start doing more of that and more speaking and more, you know, motivational keynote speaking, whatever that may look like. So yeah, I think to me, in my mind, that seems like a fun next step of, oh, I'd love to start doing more of that. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing shows. Maybe I do that in conjunction while doing
Right.
shows, but that's sort of my next, oh, it'll be fun to sort of delve into that world a little bit and see where that goes. And you
Good.
never know. We'll see.
Good. All right, let's open it up. Who has questions for Zach about anything we've talked about? Do you want further clarification or just something else that you've been wishing that you could ask him? Go ahead and unmute yourself and run with it. Jim?
Yeah. Hey, I don't have a question, but Zach, I want to say I listened to you on Grant's show, I think it was, where I heard, and you talked about doing this, handing your phone to one of the audience members. That's brilliant. I started doing that. I get such good video now. It's awesome. So thanks for that.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I mean, don't underestimate the power of just someone sitting in the front row, right? You can hire a
Yeah.
cameraman to be in the back, but just hand your phone to someone in the front and it's great.
This is again how you can tell that some of us are older. I used to have the same thing. I had a rider in mind, but I had a video camera. Like, we weren't doing all phones then, and I had a video camera, and I used to have to set up the video camera. And then I had a night where the kid running the video camera got hypnotized, and I got no video because it just sat there on the tripod the whole time.
I always ask, I'm like, hey, just like, you don't want to be hypnotized, you don't want to be a part of the show, right? And I've had stories where that's happened too. Yeah. A photographer, and I look over, the photographer's like this with the camera. Like,
right. Anybody else have any questions for Zach?
Zach, I always love to hear stories about how something has gone totally wrong and unexpected in your show, and something funny that totally surprised you in a good way.
Okay. This is the first example that's come to mind. Yeah, I'm sure all of us have a bunch of stories we can tell within that realm of possibility. There's something that gone wrong. So one of my favorite routines that I love doing is the favorite celebrity routine, where I have them hypnotized to think that I'm their favorite celebrity, and I sort of go down the line of volunteers on the stage, and oh, they don't know, remind them who I am. It's Justin Bieber, it's Taylor Swift, it's Beyonce, it's whoever it is. And it's always fun getting different responses. That's when I do it all of my shows. But I had a high school show I did. This was a couple years ago. I was still in New Hampshire, and it was a senior class, high school students. A bunch of them all had different favorite celebrities. I go up to this one kid, I say, oh, remind them who I am. And he just goes, Dad? He goes, Dad, why did you leave, Dad? I go, oh no, like I'm not about to unpack this kid's trauma on stage. I'm just, hi buddy, nice to see you again. Like that. And I didn't want to really keep going more with that. And he's like, Dad, I thought you'd never come back. I'm like, oh, I can't. Like, man, this is not good, not good abort. And I was like, oh man, like, and I just tried to wrap it up as quick as I could. But that was a just very unexpected, like, oh, you never know what's gonna happen there. Like usually it's a fun celebrity reaction. But that was they're definitely an interesting experience. Something that sort of didn't go the way I expected, but actually ended up becoming funnier, which actually turned into a whole different routine, was I do this routine sometimes where I have people hypnotized to be an impressionist, and I say, oh, you're a voice impressionist, and you're going to share your very best impression with the audience, because I believe everybody has at least one or two impressions that they just do jokingly for fun, and they usually just don't have the confidence to share it, but everybody's good at one or two. So I give them that sort of that confidence push of, you're the best impressionist and you're here to share your very best. And I had a few people up on stage, and one person did like an Arnold Schwarzenegger impression, and he was like, I'm the real Arnold. And the very next person also did that same impression, and they're like, no, I am Arnold. And it was just a funny, like, you're not Arnold, no, I am real Arnold. And they were just going at it. And I sort of just improv'd on the fly. I was like, all right, whoever's the real Arnold, like, how can you, whoever's the real Arnold, only you can lift this chair. But added the suggestion, neither of them would be able to lift it. So the first, oh, I can lift this chair. Oh, no, I can't. Why can't? This is so heavy. The other guy, oh, I can't lift it. And then this other girl comes in who is like Minnie Mouse was her impression. And I was like, watch, you guys can't lift it, but Minnie can lift it. And she comes over and lifts it. And they're like, what? Minnie is jacked. Oh my goodness. Like, and it just turned into a whole thing because they had the same impression. And just this idea of like, oh, them not being able to lift it, but some people did, ended up just turning into a routine. I now do it all of my shows where I just hypnotize them to all be bodybuilders, and they're all jacked, but they can't lift the chair at the front of the stage. And so I know it's similar to one that other people have done, but for me, it came out of that routine that didn't go the way I expected, but it became way funnier than I expected, which ended up evolving a whole new routine out of it.
That's cool.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Zach?
I've got one, if you don't mind talking about money, but I won't ask you numbers. Are you, you could not answer this, but do you monetize your YouTube? Are you making money off of YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube is probably the biggest monetization. Not probably, it is the biggest monetization out of the other platforms, TikTok, Instagram. The nice thing is YouTube sort of becomes this library where even my old videos that have been posted a year or two ago still get views every month. So I'm still making money every month from older videos. The nice thing about YouTube, unlike Instagram and TikTok, are very much like what was posted in the past few days, and after that, they're not seen very much again. Whereas YouTube, I'm sure all of you, if you're on your recommendation page, you see videos from last week, from last month, from a year or two ago, especially videos that have done really well. YouTube is constantly pushing them out. So the nice thing about the monetization on YouTube is if I post a video and it gets a lot of views, I get, a good chunk of ad revenue up front, but that just sort of continues month to month. And it sort of just becomes like this nice little passive income stream. Obviously, the more that I post, the more that I do end up making. But the nice thing is, even if I never post anything ever again, that number will go down every month, but it will still be a little bit of money that comes in from previous videos, which is really nice.
It's nice.
Well, thank you.
Colin.
Yes. So, Zach, speaking of monetization on YouTube, one of the things that most hypnotists do is they do some routines where there's commercially copyrighted music in their show. That can create some hassles with monetization on YouTube. How do you address that?
Well, I address it in sort of a lazy way, is I just don't use music in my shows. And that's not necessarily only because of the monetization. Partly, I just like doing a more natural, improvised, like down-to-earth show. And that's different hypnotists have their vibe, so it's not right or wrong either way. That's just more my style, as I came from doing street hypnosis a little bit. And so to me, I guess it's an easy answer. Oh, well, I just don't have music, so there's no need to get around that. But if I did use music, then it would be either intentionally trying to use songs that are copyright free. Like there's a whole library of, even YouTube specifically has one that you can just find all of these, just not necessarily songs like you hear on the radio, but just different sound bites or soundtracks, or you can do a funny soundtrack for certain dance, for a more serious one, or dance routine, whatever it may be. There's a lot of copyright free music you could include and use as a part of your show, with the forethought of, I'm going to post this as a video, so I will specifically pick a song or piece of music that doesn't have copyright on it. Or if you have songs that you're like, no, I have to use this song, I know it's copyrighted, but it just makes the routine so good, then you either just post it and it can't be monetized, or just think about posting the other routines that don't have music. So there's only so much you can do if you really, really need to use copyrighted music, but there is a big library of music that is copyright free that you can use as well if you need to.
Zach has one of the most, in fact, now that I'm saying, I'm like, maybe the most stripped down show I've ever seen. Like Zach pretty much just walks in and is like, hey, let's do some hypnosis. There's no, like, I don't think I've ever seen you use music at all. Do you use music at all?
I used to, my first few shows, I would like maybe do a little bit of music during the induction, and then like 1 or 2 routines where they was just, again, just a copyright free generic, just in the background. But I was like, I don't really need this. So it's just a very stripped back, just, hey, this is being able to do some hypnosis. This is fun.
You just focus on the people. Like your whole focus is on the people, really, which is cool.
Yeah. And I like to build moments that come from the moments that are happening. It's not like, oh, there's music and it's making it big, but it's like, oh, what's happening on stage? And I like doing improv. So how can I sort of add on to that or build onto that with a joke myself to sort of heighten what's already happening? Yeah. And so, yeah, it is just very, very stripped down. And like I said, I started doing street hypnosis a lot initially, and you can't really, I'm not setting up a speaker on the street, come get hypnotized to this sound. Like I'm just doing it on the fly. And so for me, that was sort of my style. Or even the res hall shows, right? When I was still on campus, I would do shows in all the res halls on campus. And again, there's not really space to set up music. It was just a very loose, relaxed, stripped down show. And so that just sort of carried to, oh, even though I'm on stage and I can have music if I want, I'm used to not using it. So why start now, I guess.